Hello and welcome to my channel, The Lab Rats. So we are doing nucleic acid lecture series, and this video is part 5 of this lecture series, structure of DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid. Those who are interested in previous video of this lecture series can find the link in the description box. Now let's begin with today's topic. So the different stages of discovery of the nucleic acid has been discussed in much detail in the first part of this lecture series, which is introduction of nucleic acid, and the link is in the description box. A major breakthrough in the discovery of DNA was during 1950 when Rosalind Franklin and Morris Wilkins, when these two scientists provided X-ray diffraction data of DNA in 1950. According to their data, DNA was a helical structure. Also, they stated that DNA has certain periodicity. Okay. So it has certain repetition of patterns, or it has certain periodicity in its structure, and this periodicity was found at every 3.4 angstrom and 34 angstrom distance all through the length of DNA. But Rosalind Franklin and Morris Wilkins could not predict the 3D structure of DNA through their X-ray diffraction data. Later, two scientists, James D. Watson and Francis Crick, they deciphered the data of X-ray diffraction which was produced by Rosalind Franklin and Morris Wilkins, and they interpreted this data. Actually, Francis Crick, he was a X-ray crystallographer. Okay, and he was already working on helical molecules. So he had a very good experience of working with helical molecules and in the field of X-ray crystallography. So it was very easy for him to decipher this data which was produced by Morris Wilkins and Rosalind Franklin. So through this X-ray diffraction data, they provided first 3D model of DNA, which is known as Watson and Crick DNA double helix model. Okay, and all the properties of DNA that was discussed in Watson-Crick model of DNA basically represent the native DNA or B form of DNA. So DNA has different form that we will discuss in later videos of this series. So DNA has different form, and the different properties that were presented by Watson and Crick about DNA was basically the property of native DNA or B form of DNA. So that we will discuss in much detail in this video. So DNA is a double-stranded structure. It is double-stranded, and both the strands are present in helical form. It is a helical structure. This helical structure is present in right-handed helix. So you must be familiar with the thumb rule of right-handed and left-handed helix. Okay. So it is a double-stranded molecule, helical structure, and it is a right-handed helix. So DNA is double-stranded, that is, it has two strands. They are present in a helical fashion and they are right-handed helix. Now DNA has polarity, so you can write the strands in a 5' to 3' direction. 5' to 3' direction. So here we can see that one strand of DNA is present in a 5' to 3' direction, and another one is in 3' to 5' direction. So it is a double stranded, but both the strands are anti-parallel. Now the backbone of DNA, we know that DNA is a polynucleotide, and a single nucleotide is made up of a pentose sugar, a phosphate group, and nitrogenous base. So the backbone of DNA, which is in contact with the aqueous solution of the cell, okay, the one which is exposed outside towards the aqueous solution of the cell, is made of pentose sugar and the phosphate group. So this backbone is made of pentose sugar and phosphate group, and the nitrogenous bases are buried inside or in the core of the DNA between two different strands of DNA. DNA backbone, it is made of sugar and phosphate. DNA core, it is made of nitrogenous base. Now coming to periodicity. So Morris Wilkins and Rosalind Franklin had deciphered that DNA has certain periodicity. So you can see that due to this helical structure, there is a turn in the DNA strand, in the polynucleotide strand of DNA. This turn of DNA is present at every 34 angstrom. At every 34 angstrom, or you can write as 3.4 nanometer. So sometimes question is asked in angstrom value and sometimes it is asked with nanometer value. So you have to remember it accordingly. Either you can remember all the dimensions in angstrom and then you can convert in nanometer whenever it is required, or you can remember all the dimensions in nanometer. So each turn of DNA is of 34 angstrom. One turn, 34 angstrom or 3.4 nanometer. Okay, now bases are in between these two strands, and the bases of both these strands, both the opposite strands, are interacting with each other with the help of hydrogen bond. So both the bases from both the opposite strands, they keep interact, they are in a so the nitrogenous bases of both the opposite strands are bonded by hydrogen bond. Okay, so one turn of DNA is of 34 angstrom in length. Okay, and each turn has 10 base pairs. So you can count here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So each turn of DNA has 10 base pairs. So 34 divided by 10 is 3.4 angstrom. It means the distance between two adjacent base pairs, for example these two adjacent base pairs, the distance between two adjacent base pairs are 3.4 angstrom or 0.34 nanometer. So next point is there are 10 base pairs per turn. Distance between adjacent base pairs. So if you see that when you see the 3D structure of DNA, all the molecules are arranged in such a manner that there is no steric hindrance, there is no collision, there is no repulsion, and so the structure is present in a very stable form. One of the reason is anti-parallel nature of these two strands, which helps in proper interaction and proper stacking of these nitrogenous bases upon each other. Okay. Now, due to the bending and turning of nucleotide, grooves are created in the nucleic acid. So you can see there are two types of groove. One is very narrow or very small. These are known as minor groove. Okay, and then there are some of the grooves which are very wide or which are very deep, and they are known as major groove. So these grooves provide kind of a pocket or kind of binding sockets for different DNA binding protein, transcription factors, replication factors, and these proteins can easily bind to or interact to the nitrogenous bases that are available in these grooves, and which helps in the performing of different functions of the DNA binding proteins. Width of major groove, it is around 22 angstrom width, and the width of minor groove, it is around 12 angstrom. Also, the base pairing between both the strands of the DNA is in such a way that both the strands are present at equal distance all through the length of DNA, and this distance is the distance between both the strands all through the DNA is 20 angstrom. Okay, so if you imagine this DNA as a cylinder, or if you imagine it as a tube, okay, so the diameter of this tube is 20 angstrom. It is 20 angstrom. Now if you see the double stranded DNA in a detailed way, so this is the double stranded DNA, this is the sugar phosphate backbone, sugar phosphate backbone. Now these phosphate group, they have negative charge which provides overall negativity or negative charge to the DNA, and there are bases in the core or between these two strands. So these bases are hydrophobic, and the bases of both the strands are connected by hydrogen bond. Now let's see this structure in a much more detail. So this is a sugar phosphate backbone. This is the base, this is the base, and the bases of both the opposite strands are attached by the hydrogen bonding. Now we just discussed that the distance between both the strands or the diameter of DNA is 20 angstrom. Okay. Now there is another diameter that is known as internal diameter of the DNA. So there is one diameter which is this overall diameter. This is 20 angstrom. Okay. And now we know that the bases of the nucleotide are attached to the first carbon, 1 prime carbon of the sugar. Okay. This is the first carbon, 1 prime carbon of the pentose sugar to which the bases are attached. So the distance between 1 prime carbon of both the pentoses of opposite strands, okay, this is 11 angstrom. Okay, and this is the internal diameter of DNA. External diameter 20 angstrom, internal diameter 11 angstrom. Okay. Now the DNA follows Chargaff's rule. Okay, Chargaff's rule. What is Chargaff's rule? So according to Chargaff's rule, DNA is made of 4 nitrogenous bases. 2 nitrogenous bases are derived from purine and 2 are derived from pyrimidine. So the purine derived one are guanine and adenine. Okay, pyrimidine derived one are cytosine and thymine. Now according to Chargaff rule, the composition of these 4 nitrogenous bases can vary from species to species, but the ratio of these nitrogenous bases will always follow the Chargaff rule, which is guanine, the quantity of guanine in a DNA will always be equal to cytosine and quantity of adenine will always be equal to thymine, and that is G plus A divided by C plus T. This ratio will be equal to 1. Now if you come to hydrogen bonds, so he concluded that between thymine and adenine there are 2 hydrogen bonds. Between cytosine and guanine there are 3 hydrogen bonds. Between adenine and thymine there are 2 hydrogen bonds, and between guanine and cytosine there are 3 hydrogen bonds. So whenever we talk about GC content of DNA, you can find different questions regarding GC content in different entrance examinations. So GC content of DNA, it defines the stability of DNA. So more the GC content, more the stable DNA is. Because between guanine and cytosine there are 3 hydrogen bonds, which comparison to adenine and thymine is a stronger bond. Okay, because they have 3 hydrogen bond, and between adenine and thymine there are only 2 hydrogen bond. So GC content also explains the stability of DNA. Also we use this theory in various experiments. For example, whenever we do PCR and we design our primer, okay, so we always keep in mind about the composition of different nitrogenous bases, that is ATGC, what is the composition of these nitrogenous bases, and it will define the melting temperature of our primer. Okay, so we know that more the GC, more the temperature it will require to separate 2 strands, more the stable the strands are. So this is just one example. Adenine will always bind to thymine and guanine will always pair with cytosine. Okay, so this kind of forms a complementary rule. Complementarity. Okay, so it kind of follows a complementarity, that is adenine will always pair with thymine of the opposite strand, guanine of one strand of DNA will always pair with the cytosine of the opposite strand, like we can see here in the example. Thymine has been bonded with adenine, cytosine has been bonded with guanine, guanine has been bonded with cytosine. So there is always this complementarity. Also this complementarity is very useful for maintaining a proper genetic composition of a human being. For example, this strand 1 is a complete complementarity to this strand 2, or strand 2 is a complementary strand for strand 1. Okay, now during replication what happens, these 2 strands are separated. Okay, replication is a template based process. Okay, it is a template based process. So it always require one template strand. For example, if replication uses this strand 1 as a template, so it will synthesize one new strand which will be complementary to this first strand, and the complementary strand will be exactly replica of this second strand. Similarly, if replication uses the second strand, it will form a complementary strand for the second one, and that complementary strand will be exact replica of this first one. So in this way, the genetic composition of a human being is maintained, and so this complementary fashion of DNA is very important for maintaining the genetic composition of a human being or of any organism. Now let's talk about different factors that helps in stability of DNA. So factors affecting stability of DNA. Okay. So one of the characteristic feature of DNA is both the strands are present in anti-parallel fashion. Okay. So this anti-parallel arrangement of both the strand helps in better stacking of the nitrogenous bases of both the strands, also in better interaction between these nitrogenous bases. So one is the anti-parallel nature of both the strands. Second is hydrogen bonding. So hydrogen bonding is a weak bonding. It is a weak bond, but because there are several lot of hydrogen bonds present all through the length of DNA, so collectively all these hydrogen bonds act as a strong bond. Individually a hydrogen bond is a weak bond, but when there are a lot of hydrogen bond, they collectively act as a strong bond. So there are two hydrogen bond between each adenine and thymine, and there are three hydrogen bonds between cytosine and guanine, and it is in such a way that the distance between cytosine and guanine is equal to the distance between adenine and thymine. So if you see here that adenine is always complementary to thymine and cytosine is always paired with guanine. Now suppose if adenine interacts with guanine and cytosine interacts with thymine. Now cytosine and thymine both are a single ring structure, so the distance between cytosine and thymine will be less, and the adenine and guanine both are double ring structures, so the distance between them will be much more in comparison to that between cytosine and thymine, and in this way both the strands can never remain at equal distance all through the length of DNA, and that is why the hydrogen bonding is always between adenine and thymine and between cytosine and guanine. Now the second one is stacking interaction. So earlier only hydrogen bond was thought to provide stability to DNA. Even nowadays also people talk only about hydrogen bonding when they talk about stability of DNA. So another and the major factor which provides stability to DNA is stacking interaction. So during one experiment, when people treated nucleic acid with urea and formamide, okay, these two are the denaturants. So when they treated nucleic acid with urea and formamide, they found that both the strands of nucleic acid were still kind of interacting with each other. So they thought that there might be some other interactions apart from hydrogen bonding that was stabilizing the DNA, and then there was discovery of stacking interaction between both the strands of DNA. So stacking interaction include hydrophobic interaction. So if you see in this structure, you will find that this backbone of nucleic acid, which is made of sugar and phosphate, it is hydrophilic in nature. This backbone is hydrophilic in nature. Okay, and these nitrogenous bases, they are hydrophobic in nature. Because these backbone structures are hydrophilic in nature, they are present in the outside of the nucleic acid structure, and these hydrophobic nitrogenous bases are buried in between these two strands. So like we see in case of protein, so suppose this is the structure of a protein. So after folding, whenever a protein is present in an aqueous solution, so after folding, the amino acid residues that are present on the surface of protein, they are mainly hydrophilic. They are mainly hydrophilic, that can interact with the aqueous environment, and the one which is present in the core of the protein, they are mainly hydrophobic. So in the same way, nitrogenous bases are present in the core of the nucleic acid in between these two DNA backbones that are made of hydrophilic sugar phosphate residues. Okay, and these nitrogenous bases interact with each other with the help of hydrophobic interaction, and thus they stabilize the DNA. And the second type of stackic interaction is van der Waal interaction. So the distance between two adjacent nitrogenous bases in the nucleic acid is based on the van der Waals distance, is based on the van der Waals interaction, and the stacking of these nitrogenous bases in the nucleic acid is also based on the van der Waals interaction. So it is basically a very weak interaction, but its significance increases in the presence of other interaction. For example, here we have hydrogen bonding, hydrophobic interaction. So in the presence of other interaction, van der Waals interaction shows certain significance, and this weak interaction also helps in stability of DNA. So this stacking interaction, this is also known as pi stacking. Okay. So on the basis of this stacking interaction or pi stacking, aromatic rings are stacked on each other in the form of coin. Okay, by this pi stacking. So why pi stacking? Because aromatic rings, they have pi bonds. Okay, they have pi bonds, and this pi stacking helps in stacking of aromatic nitrogenous bases upon each other and helps in stacking interaction of these nitrogenous bases. Now the next important factor is ionic interaction. So in the backbone of DNA, sugar phosphate residue is present, and this phosphate group has negative charge. All the phosphate group has one negative charge, and these negative charge on the phosphate group start repelling each other. Okay. So some of the repulsion is overcome by different molecules that are present in the cell. For example, magnesium ion, cationic proteins. Okay, the proteins which have a net positive charge. Okay, and then amino acids such as arginine, lysine. So these are some of the cellular molecules that helps in interacting with these negative charges and overcome the repulsion between negative charges present on the phosphate group, and hence stabilizes the DNA. So these are some of the factors that helps in providing stability to the DNA. Thank you so much for watching the video. If this video was useful to you, please like and share it. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon for recent updates. You can post all your video related query in the comment section. Also, for your queries and recent update, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning and keep motivating.